Before the actual class, I would like to make an announcement. First of all, is that in fact the Shurangama Sutra will conclude for this year by next Monday and Tuesday. The classes, in fact, won't continue for this year, but we'll resume the classes next February or March. If death doesn't dawn on us, because life is impermanent. I'm saying that my life is impermanent, same as yours. Of course, for people who hold on to your life dearly, then you probably feel that is not possible. But for people who practice Abba impermanence, you would feel that, well, it's normal to contemplate Abba impermanence. So next Monday and Tuesday, we'll have last two classes for this year on the Shurangama Sutra. And it will have winter holiday, and then we'll resume the class next February February or March, because I know there are people who don't listen to other classes, but only Shurangama Sutra. Therefore, I would like to make such an announcement to you. Another thing is about our constructions over here. There are the volunteers or our staff member who work on the project of constructions. In fact, this year, because it's getting colder, so our constructions would conclude for this year as well very soon. And for people who work in other posts and positions, I know that you still will have to continue with your your volunteering works. Over here, I would like to take this opportunity to express my gratitude to those of you who work as a volunteer to serve the Sangha and serve for other communities. In fact, I know it is very difficult to serve others. It is very difficult to consistently to serve others. So I'd like to extend my gratitude to all of you. Let it be that you work, you have a big position or small position, or do only very little things. I myself, I've been working or extending my scope of work in many different areas, such as charity work, such as schools, and many different areas. I know there are volunteers and the staff members who, in fact, really spend lots of time and energy in their work. Sometimes it may seem that there are people who work in different positions, such as work as a teacher or work in monasteries. Maybe your work is not necessarily having to do with your practice, and maybe the volunteering time did influence and did impact or shorten your personal practice. And I've already tried to give you lots of opportunities to listen to the Dharma, and I've tried my best to also offer you lots of the benefits, so to speak, to have the opportunities to listen to certain Dharmas. And this is my way of expressing my gratitude to you, because I know lots of volunteers, in fact, they have taken up lots of responsibilities, sometimes beyond our imaginations. I know obstacles and hardships are encountered on the way by them, but I think they've endured those hardships. On one hand, we should take the obstacles and hardships as something that's very normal, not just the works to serve others. In fact, everything in this world is very difficult. It will encounter some hardships halfway through. Everything's like that. And I think it's rather quite normal. And I think this is something that we should then work through, and this is something that we should try our best to persevere all the way through. And do not get too entangled into those obstacles. So that's something I would like to address today. The second thing, which is to express my gratitude to those of you. I know there are people who've given up lots of their personal life and their private time to serve the Sangha, to serve the sentient beings, and to that I really am very thankful to those of you, especially. I noticed that there are people who, in fact, work in small positions, or rather not known by people, but they continuously to work in such group. And I think without such kind of spirit of serving others and helping others, it would be difficult for others to receive such kind of help. So this is something that I would like to address before the end of 2019. This is the message of gratitude and thankfulness to the people who serve the others, who serve the Sangha, who serve selflessly. So I myself, I'm very thankful. Maybe I never had the opportunity to personally express my gratification to you, but at least I really hope that you would hear this message that I am expressing today. I myself pray to those of you who serve others and hope everything goes well and everything it would be auspicious to you. And then the third one is there's a Vajrayana dictionary that is then underway of editorial. I've had this plan, but it's been prolonged. Last year, we initiated this list that we asked the people to. We asked the people to sign up, whomsoever want to work on this dictionary. And mostly I would ask for people who want to work on this dictionary inside Larongar. I don't really need lots of people from the English version. At first, I really need the Tibetan and Chinese volunteers. First of all, I need your names, and I need to figure out who is going to provide such kind of service at the beginning and who's going to do it later. So we need some kind of plans. I am asking for the kind of people who are good at both Tibetan language and English language. Because if you don't even know the alphabets of Tibetan, then how can you volunteer in such a position? So you need to know both languages. And the second one is that you need to be proficient in Buddhism knowledge as well. And the third one is that you need to invest at least 3 years in making this dictionary. I've translated lots of Vajrayana as well as Sutrayana teachings, but I found that there is no particular dictionary that is dedicated to Vajrayana teachings. Therefore, I want to slowly make this dictionary. I know that making a dictionary would take a long time, just as Tsotrem Lodro once said. Khenpo Tsotrem Lodro said that it's quite important to make a worldly dictionary of the three languages, the Chinese language, the Tibetan language, and the English language. And he's been working on that project for over 10 years. So I know that it's going to take a long time. I personally feel that it's quite important to make a dictionary for the Vajrayana Buddhism and including all the three languages as well. I think it would be very helpful for people who are studying the Vajrayana teaching as well as translation and such kind of works. And the volunteers or staff members I'm looking for could be female, male, monks or nuns, and it's completely fine. The second requirement is that you need to be physically and mentally healthy, and you need to have the characteristic or personality of perseverance. And I can then provide you a work lunch. And then the next one is enjoying studying and having curiosity for knowledge and have the professional attitude towards knowledge. This is not a class to teach you Tibetan language, but this is a class to inquire you to have the open-mindedness and curiosity to gain more knowledge. And for people who have the experience of working in the editorial aspect of dictionary would be, in fact, preferred. So for those of you who want to apply, then you can submit your info after class, and you can go to the Khenpos and Khenmos to write down your name, and later on we can have the selections later. You don't have to put your photographs there yet, maybe for later, but later on you can fill out this form after class. In fact, I know there are people who've already made the application last year, but the name list and the applications were lost by the management team, so we have to do this again. When you're writing essays at the end of the year, and when you're writing your personal experience of studying Dharma, I really hope that for those of you who have the ability to write your own stories, to write your experience, to write your any kind of stories that you have, sometimes it would be also quite meaningful. So now let's actually get into the actual class. Yesterday, I felt that my teaching was not really great. I felt that it was not enough, but people told me that the words that I taught yesterday was about 14,000 words, which were quite a bit. Recently, I'm not keeping up with good health, and Khenpos and Khenmos last night when they were reporting to me after class, I didn't feel that I could hear it. So I feel kind of tired. And today, I'm not sure what kind of teaching I'm going to give today, and it really all depends. Let's just be very spontaneous. The Shurangama Sutra, yesterday we've already finished the 6 attempts of searching for the mind, and today we will then get to the 7th one. Yesterday, during last night's class, when we talk about the reference points or the mark, I think in that teaching, maybe I wasn't really I felt I was clear, but maybe it wasn't too clear. But in terms of reference point, the mark, it has two ways of explaining what it was or what it means in the sutra. According to the Tibetan Tripitaka, what it means is that if the mind is in the middle, then do you have a mark that marks the middle? If there is no mark on the outside to show that it's a middle, then it is just like the space. Then you cannot say that it's a middle. Or if it has the middle, if it is then set on the middle, just as if my mind is here where the cup is, when I look at it from the east, then it is in the middle of west and east. And if this reference point were to be closer to me, then this mark is no longer exactly in the middle anymore. Or if you were to move it to the other side, then this mark is no longer in the middle as well. So this mark, this so-called reference point, could be mind, refers to the mind. Everyone has a mind. And then if you were to say that the mind is in the middle of west and east, if I were to move it a little bit closer to the east, then it is no longer in the middle. If I were to move it towards a little bit to the left or to the right, then it is no longer in the middle either. Then in such a way, you cannot say it is in the middle. Or if you were to say that if the person is here and then the mind is over there, then it is in the middle of west and east. But if the person steps a few steps over, then it is no longer in the middle. So there are a few ways of explaining it. Yesterday, I listened to the after-class presentations. How I felt was that they didn't really understand the content of the class, and they were just guessing. If you don't really understand, then it is the best to be very humble and listen to others' explanation rather than pretending to be very confident and then deliver a presentation. It is the best to listen to it again and again so that you will gain clarity on the content. Sometimes when we listen to rather very difficult content, we should read it over again and again. What I did with the difficult content, such as the wisdom chapter of the Way of Bodhisattva, I read it over and over so that later on I finally understood it. Similarly to the Buddhist logic, at the beginning I didn't understand it, and then I read lots of reference books, and then I also contemplated upon myself so that later on I finally gained understanding of it. There are practitioners who said that Khenpo only read read this particular one reference book, so all you need to do is read this book. In fact, that's not true. I read lots of reference books, and I call upon you to read many reference books as well, so that you will get more understanding from different perspectives, and you will also be able to get more of more knowledge upon it. Otherwise, it would be very difficult to truly understand what the content means. So I really feel that this time I am explaining it quite extensively compared to the previous commentaries and previous explanations. Therefore, for those of you who don't understand the teaching, it is the best to then go back to the transcripts, to go back to different reference books so that you'll be able to understand. I heard that lots of people didn't understand the teaching at all. They felt that they were on airplanes and they were dozing off, and they felt drowsy because of the teaching. And based on your expression, then you can definitely tell that you haven't gained enlightenment yet. Do not treat difficult knowledge as an old dog who doesn't want to chew the hard bones anymore. You should then continuously to chew over the information again and again so that you'll be able to understand. There are people who usually feel really quite arrogant about their knowledge and their understanding. Then it is best that you can go to those people and then ask them to explain it to you. I think in this way, it is quite beneficial to both of you. Yesterday, I've already finished the 6 attempts of searching from the mind. In fact, I wanted to finish the 7, but we ran out of time yesterday, so let's finish it today. Ananda at that time said to the Buddha, said that, world-honored one, when I have seen the Buddha turn the Dharma wheel in the past with the great Madhgalyana, Subhuti, and Purna, and Shariputra, the 4 great disciples of yours, I heard that you were giving them teachings. And then you often say that the nature of the mind which perceives, makes discriminations, and is aware, it is in fact located neither within nor outside nor in the middle. So he said that it is not in the outside, not inside, not outside, nor in the middle. Remember yesterday, we already studied how the mind is not between the I nor the object. It has 2 types of. It has then 2 types of outcome. It is neither then the I nor the object. And how could the mind be in the middle of it? Because the mind cannot then mix with the I nor the object. So that's the first aspect. If I were to add right now, then maybe you will feel quite confused. I'm not sure if I've made this clear yesterday. Yesterday, when I was giving the teaching, I felt that my mind was floating halfway through in the air and floating in the space. And so I'm not sure if it was clear. Yesterday, we talked that if the mind is between the I and the object, how could the mind mix with it? Does the mind mix with the I or the object? If it does, then everything is mixed together and it is a chaos. If it doesn't, then it doesn't make any connections with the I or the object. Then it doesn't make any sense at all. So that's the 2 arguments that we studied yesterday. And now Ananda started saying that, well, since I've heard that this is the way you've taught your 4 great disciples, that it is neither within nor outside nor in the middle. It is not located anywhere at all. That very non-attachment to anything is what is called the mind. So this very non-attachment, my mind. Therefore, I feel that the non-attachment is my mind. Is that true? Ananda started to ask the Buddha, saying that this non-attachment is my mind. And later on, the explanation, then later on, the Buddha started to explain to him, saying that you say that the nature of the mind, which perceives, makes discriminations, and is aware, is not located anywhere at all. That's what you said, isn't it? So now let's look at it. The entirety of things existing in the world consists of space, the water, the land, the creatures that could fly and walk. And all these external objects, all of these animate and inanimate objects that is in this world, such as the water, land, those are the inanimate world, and then all of these creatures that could fly and walk, all of those sentient beings, all of those animates. So the entirety of things, all of them, all the way from space to this world, from sentient to the inanimate. Everything, the entirety of things. Isn't that what you meant? Since you've already said that mind is non-attachment, then does this non-attachment also exist? It either exists or it doesn't exist. Just like previously, we've listed all the animate and inanimate. So does mind exist or not? And then Buddha continued to say that if it does not exist, if the mind doesn't exist, if this non-attachment does not exist, in such a way, then lots of things doesn't exist, such as hairs on a tortoise, or horns on a rabbit, or a son or daughter of a barren woman. I think, in fact, we often use the example of the son of a barren woman, but we can also say the daughter of a barren woman, isn't it? Or you can say that I really love my sweater that is made of the hairs on a tortoise. Nobody would speak of such a thing because they don't exist. So as you said before, if it is non-attachment and this non-attachment doesn't exist, then it is not possible. If it doesn't exist, if it is non-attachment, there's not even the concept of attachment or non-attachment. It is completely wrong. It is completely absurd. So that's the first one, that there's no meaning if the mind doesn't exist. The second one, if a non-attachment existed, if it exists, if this non-attachment existed, it could not be said to be non-existent. To be non-existent is to be without attribute, to be without any kind of characteristics. To be existent is to have attributes. Whatever has attributes has a location. If you were to say that this non-attachment doesn't have attributes, then it doesn't have any property to exist. If you were to say that it has attributes, then it must have a location. Because it exists. Then how can you say that it is non-attachment, it is unattached? If you were to say that it exists, then it has attributes. If it doesn't have attributes, if it doesn't exist, then it doesn't have attributes. If you were to say that it has attributes, then it exists. And if it exists, it must be attached to something. It must be touching something. Then how could you say that it is unattached? Let's look at our cups, at our thermos, and our pillars. In fact, all of these things that exist, they have attributes and they are attached to certain things. Over here, we're talking about mind. What is the attribute or characteristic of mind? Over here, Ananda didn't express it in the way that the mind is empty but luminous and it is illusory and dreamlike. Ananda didn't recognize that, but Ananda is presenting it from the mundane being's perspective, from people without any knowledge or understanding of the mind. So he's presenting it from a way that they're still thinking that mind is some existent substance. And if you were to search for the mind in such a way and look at this and follow this logic and go through this 7 attempts of searching for the mind, then you'll be able to understand what the mind is. If you do not have any of the pith instructions or understanding of the mind, then by reading this, you probably would get even farther away from it. I really feel that the 7 attempts of searching for the mind, I feel is really good. But the outcome is that you cannot find where the mind is. So I think it's still a little bit difficult for people to recognize the nature of mind through the 7 attempts of searching for the mind. It is still not a pith instruction of Vajrayana of finding the mind. This pointing out instructions, the 7 attempts of searching for the mind is so different than the ones of the Vajrayana's pith instructions. So for people who had such studies and profound studies into different treatises and Vajrayana teachings, you probably have already understood what I meant. Over here, then the Buddha pointed out that this so-called non-attachment mind has nowhere to be found. So we've already finished the 7 attempts of finding the mind in the Shrangama Sutra. Lots of great masters that they consider that these 7 searches for the mind are in fact quite profound. And some masters would consider that these 7 points are very similar to the analysis from the Madhyamika. The 4 ways of arguing that the 4 kinds of birth are not valid in Madhyamika, such as Master Ji Yuan from the Song Dynasty. He said that this is very similar to the ones of the Madhyamika teaching, such as the first one and the third one, that it talks about how mind is not inside nor in the root or in the faculty. In fact, it is then a way to refute that mind is not born from within, and the second one is not outside. Then it is refutation on that mind is not born from outside, and then the 4th one and the 5th one talks about it is not born together, and the 5th one. 5th one and the 7th one, where it talks about mind is where Ananda thinks that mind is non-attachment. Then over there, it is a refutation from the analysis of Madhyamika, where it talks about that mind is not where there is no birth of out of no cause. That's the teaching given in Madhyamika, where it says that all dharmas is not self-born, it is not others-born, it is not born out of no cause, and it is not born out of the conjoined causes. So these are the ways of analyzing the 7 attempts of searching for the minds. It's very similar. That's another way of looking at it. I think that's something that you can make reference to as well. Sometimes it may not be exactly the same, but at least I think we can look into it and have a certain understanding of it. Previously, we've already finished the 7 attempts of finding the mind. And the next one, so let's continue. Then Ananda arose from his seat in the midst of the great assembly, the bodhisattvas and the arhats and so on. I think previously Ananda must have been sitting. So he arose from his sitting. And over there, Ananda previously, we've already heard the questions that was asked by Ananda, and we should be very grateful to Ananda because through his questions, we heard the teachings from the Buddha. So over there, Ananda then arose from the seat in the midst of the great assembly and uncovered his right shoulder. In here, in fact, it points out that the custom at that time in India, it is a way of showing respect, a way to respect the kings when you were to see the kings, or a way to show respect to your guru or your teacher. And he placed his right knee on the ground. It is rather. After he knelt up on his right knee, he then reverently jointed his palms together and then said to the Buddha, he said that I am the Tathagata's youngest cousin. On one hand, Ananda is the youngest cousin of the Buddha. On the other, he is the attendant of the Buddha. In fact, he is the son of Shuklodana, who was the younger brother of Shuddhodana, and Shuddhodana was the father of Shakyamuni Buddha. Shuddhodana has 4 brothers, and each one of them had 2 sons. So together they had 8 sons together. So together they had 8 sons, so 8 cousins. And among all the relatives of Shakyamuni Buddha, the younger brother of Shakyamuni's father, King Shuddhodana, was Amritodana, and he was the father of Devadatta. And Amritodana was also the father of Ananda. So Ananda and Devadatta were cousins as well. And when Ananda got ordained, in fact, he was the youngest, and he started to serve and attend the Buddha. He was the youngest attendant, and he became attendant of. He was the youngest disciple at that time, also the attendant of the Buddha. And then he said that I have received the Buddha's compassionate love and affection and have left a home life, got ordained, but I have been dependent on the Buddha's affection. Sometimes we say that because of other people's affection, at that time, as a consequence, have pursued erudition. But I am not yet I have not yet attained the fruition of outflows or fruition of without outflows. Although Ananda have heard lots of teachings from the Buddha because he was really close to the Buddha, but he did not practice very diligently, so he had not attained arhathood at that time. And according to Master Oi's commentary, he said that at the beginning of this Shurangama Sutra, Ananda had not attained any fruition yet, so he was still a mundane being. And then at the end of the third chapter, Ananda attained the first level of fruition of the Shravaka, and then the fourth chapter he attained the second level of fruition, and then later on, after the parinirvana of the Buddha, by the pressure given by Mahakashapa, Ananda then attained the full enlightenment of arhathood. And then Mahakashapa passed down the teachings and asked Ananda to protect all the teachings of the Buddha. So at that time, during the beginning of the Shurangama Sutra, in fact, Ananda had not attained any enlightenment or any realization yet. So from this, we can see a great spiritual teacher such as Shakyamuni Buddha. There are the different kind of levels of beings around him, even the ones who are very close to him are as his relatives, such as Shuddhadana, such as Devadatta, and Ananda as his attendant. At the same time, his cousin did not attend arhathood at that time, even after being with the Buddha for a long period of time. Just as that, nowadays, lots of people would promote themselves because there are certain relatives, certain attendants of the teacher, of the Lama, younger brother, or children, or grandchildren, or so on, or someone who stayed in the Buddhist academy for a period of time, and they would then promote themselves because of different names. I think nowadays lots of people only look at the Lama or only look at the monastics from the perspective of their status, from where they come from, or from what kind of relations they've had with the masters. On one hand, yes, some of the people may have received lots of the oral transmissions and blessings from the teacher. But on the other hand, there are people who are rather quite arrogant and did not listen to the Dharma from the teacher. Rather, their only focus is on their own well-being and not the Dharmas. And in such a way, it's very difficult to say whether that person has the requirement of being a good teacher. In fact, I think this kind of prerequisites are quite important to scrutinize before you listen or before you study under certain people. Just as nowadays, there are people who want to be a teacher want to be a kindergarten teacher, and even to apply for a kindergarten teacher, you need to have prerequisites, and you would look at his credentials. You can't just simply look at whether that person come from certain places or studied with someone. You need to know the complete credentials of that person. So over here, Ananda said that I know that the Buddha has such great affection towards me and is so compassionate to me, and I've been following the Buddha for such a long period of time, and because of that, I've heard lots of teachings by the Buddha. But over here, Ananda said that he's not diligent, therefore he had not attained realization of any level yet. Just as it is stated in the classics of the Dharma Garden with groves of gems, it says that the sublime Dharma taught by the Buddha, I shall practice accordingly. To practice the Dharma diligently, one is assured to achieve liberation. So, unless for very rare cases that the Lama could help you, even if you do not have any, even if you do not practice diligently, but majority of the time, in fact, if you do not practice accordingly to the Dharma, then you do not, you cannot be assured to achieve liberation. Ananda, in fact, listened to lots of the teachings and were able to ask lots of questions to the Buddha, but it is so pitiful that he didn't practice accordingly. It is so pitiful that he had not really attained liberation at that time yet. So if you were to only listen to the teachings without any practice, then you can call yourself a scholar but not a practitioner. And all the teachings that you study would not help to eradicate your own afflictions at all. So that's such pitiful. That is very pitiful. Therefore, it is quite important to find a teacher who are fully qualified and then practice accordingly. You should not just go to all the teachers, go to the famous and well-known teachers and just take photos. There are people who would come to Laronggar and they would take photos in Laronggar. They would take photos with certain lamas and tokus, and then they would take those photos and go outside and would say that they come from Laronggar. There are many people come from Laronggar who visit Laronggar. There are tourists who come to Laronggar and take photos over here. But how could you say that there are people who are qualified to teach the Dharma, who are qualified as being a teacher? Another aspect of it is that Ananda, in fact, constantly think of others when he was with the Buddha. Ananda is quite considerate to others when he attends the Buddha. There are attendants who then serves the there are the attendants who serves the teacher, but they don't really consider the well-being of others. In fact, this is quite important to. This is quite important to be an attendant around the teacher, because there are the ones who are very flattery, and there are people who are quite who would then gossip a lot, and in such a way the teacher would get influenced by these kind of people as well. Another thing to address during the Another thing to keep in mind is that while you're attending a teacher, while you're serving a teacher, then you should remember that the teacher is not yours. The teacher is for the sentient beings. You should not try to control the teacher. You should not then try to keep the teacher only for yourself. And in such a way, it really would create obstacles for the teacher. The teacher says something, or the teacher sees someone, or the teacher's arrangement of certain wealth or objects has to go through the attendants. And in such a way, I think it would be quite disturbing to, or quite destructive to the teacher's Dharma activity. I've met attendants. I've met attendants of different teachers before, and at the beginning, they may appear to be great practitioners, and later on, their desire towards their desire for the power started to increase, and then they want to get involved with all the aspects of the teacher, and then they want to stop the teacher's certain doing, and so on. So I think it is quite important to give the teacher certain freedom. And by keeping the teacher not free, it would create difficulties and negative karma for yourself as well. So over here, Ananda's service to the Buddha should be studied by the attendants of different teachers or close people of the teacher. Lots of people would say that, oh, the teacher is ill, the teacher is going to pass into parinirvana very soon, the teacher is very tired, and so on. They would constantly say things like that. Once I remember that Phuntsogren Rinpoche was taking rest in the resort of Chengdu, and someone came, wanted to see Phuntsogren Rinpoche, and I told that person saying that Phuntsogren Rinpoche is taking rest, so he can't see you right away. And Phuntsogren Rinpoche, after heard of the story, Phuntsogren Rinpoche said, you should have told me, and you shouldn't have asked the people away. But sometimes when I do let the people to see him, Phuntsogren Rinpoche would appear to be unhappy as well. And sometimes they would refuse what they would refuse what they said before. They'll change their mind. Sometimes they will say that they did, and sometimes they would say they didn't. Anyhow, the attitude of the people around the teacher is in fact quite important. For people with rather really terrible attitude who are considered as close students or attendants as the teacher, then it would create negative impressions for the others. Or if you would appear to be very compassionate towards others and represent your teacher in such a way, then the ones who come to see the teacher, even if they're quite rude and very harsh, they would slowly increase their level of compassion. So sometimes I would reflect upon myself. I remember that I spent a long period of time with Phuntsogren Rinpoche, and during such kind of period of time, it was very difficult to then look at my own mistakes. But later on, I recognized that lots of things I've done were not really the 100%, but I've tried my best. I had to say that I've already tried my best, although I cannot really alternate the things that had gone before. So I really want to say that people who are around the teachers, in fact, it's quite important to be in harmony with one another. Sometimes 3 people, if they're working together on a project, they would be in competition. Their action, their speech would show such disharmony. In fact, this is rather quite inappropriate, because if you were to have such kind of capacity to staff or serve your teacher or to serve the Sangha, then you should try your best to work for to provide your service, rather than being in the mentality of competitiveness. So it's quite important to recognize that the teacher does not belong to you. The teacher belongs to all sentient beings. There are there are lamas who are just like Avalokiteshvara. Their disciples Their disciples are like, in fact, for me, I am very direct, and I would point out my disciples' downfalls. And for teachers who are really compassionate, just like Avalokiteshvara, they wouldn't say anything about it. And then in such a way, the disciples would just be like the horns that you would put in a pocket that is hidden, but it would create lots of harm within. So one hand is that Ananda, in fact, he is quite learned. On the other is that Ananda really tried his best to serve the Buddha and the community. And now Ananda said that the Buddha was really compassionate and caring to me, but I have not attained the level of without outflow. That is the fourth stage of fruition of arhatship. And then Ananda said that I could not overcome the Kapila mantra. I was spun around by it and sank in the house of prostitution. In the Tibetan version, it is translated as a house of prostitution or brothel, but in some other commentaries, it says it's a house of entertainment. The Matangi woman was the mother, and the woman who, in fact, the woman or her daughter's name is Matangi woman's daughter, who then wanted to seduce Ananda. Recently, I've been trying to translate the Sutra of Matangi woman, and then within that sutra, it could very easily to see that Ananda was very much. Ananda was pursued a lot by the Matangi woman's daughter, and then the daughter continuously to follow Ananda, whether Ananda's begging for alms or went to study or wherever Ananda goes, the woman would follow him. And then Ananda was really upset about it. A Matangi woman didn't start with the use of Kapila mantra because she felt that the Sangha, the assembly of the omniscient Buddha, cannot be under the mantra of Kapila, under the control of Kapila mantra. And then the Kapila woman's daughter started to threaten her mother by committing suicide, and because of such threatening, the mother had to use this Kapila mantra to seduce Ananda. At the beginning, the mantra's strength was not that strong. But then the mother closed the doors and the windows and closed Ananda inside the room. And the daughter said that if you were to keep the windows and doors, I will turn Ananda into my husband by the evening. So you should keep all the doors and windows locked. And around the evening time, then the Buddha's blessings dawned and then saved Ananda. So my advice for the women, I think because of your desire, if it was not transformed onto the path of practice, then it could really create lots of harm. Therefore, it is quite important to make sure that you can use reasonable methods to to resolve your relationship issues and your great longing and desire. Especially, do not threaten or commit suicide. This is quite important to remember. Recently, a famous celebrity, a Korean celebrity, committed suicide, and the media stated that her name was Soli, and she committed suicide. She was one of the well-known celebrity in Korea. She started her training to become a celebrity around the age of 11 or so, and then around the age of 15 she got really famous, and she committed suicide, and she died yesterday at the age of 25. Many media reported that she had severe depression. Many people committed suicide because of depression, and there are lots of women who commit suicide because of loss of relationship or not getting what they want. And I think the main thing is that they had not found the true mind that they have. It is quite important to remember. In fact, in this world, we are not really of lack of anything. We have everything in this world. We have, we can be content with what we have, but because of our grasping and desire, then we'll suffer because of that. When we were young, so I think young people, it is quite important to supplicate to the three jewels often and tame your own mind. This is quite important to practice the method of taming the mind. If you were to learn to practice the methods of taming your mind, it would be rather quite easy. Depression is quite terrifying nowadays, even within practitioners. From Buddhism's point of view, I think it has something to do with grasping. You probably would feel that you're under pressure, and you probably feel that you're useless, and you probably feel that you're not taken care of or taken seriously by others, and maybe you feel that you're of no value to others. Continuously, if you constantly think in such a way, if you have this kind of concepts again and again and think in such a way, you will only then add into this symptom of feeling useless. In fact, when we look at the modern symptoms of depression and harming oneself, such as cutting and so on, these kind of actions are very unreasonable and are not of logic at all, and it would harm your own as well as your family. So, when you have afflictions, when you are under depression, do not continue to fetter yourself in the mood of depression and in such kind of thinking pattern. It is quite important to get out of that thinking pattern. The karma of sentient beings are very different. The habitual patterns of everyone's very different. People tend to grasp onto the external phenomena and the external substance. On the other hand, we grasp on ourselves. And we don't really have a true value, our world value and our value for ourselves. So we don't really have any standard for such value. And if we don't have such kind of value, then it would only drag us into the quagmire of the afflictions that we made for ourselves. And then it could lead us to very disappointing actions of our that which harms ourselves. I know that Dharma practitioners also have afflictions, but I think since we've already studied the Dharma, then we have the methods of working with such kind of afflictions. And we can work with the afflictions from the Sutrayana's point of view, and we can look at the nature of our afflictions from the Vajrayana's point of view. So from this point of view, in fact, the methods or the tools to work with afflictions differs us as Dharma practitioners than those of who are non-practitioners. So I really call upon those of you who have already gotten those methods of working with afflictions, and I really hope that you could spread this kind of methods to others who do not have such kind of tools. On one hand, I feel very proud that I feel really proud of giving the teaching of the Dharma, and I'm very certain and confident that this kind of methods have already helped lots of people. And I know that for many people, if they had never really studied the Dharma, then they're probably no longer living in this world anymore. And I think this kind of mentality is quite common in this world for non-practitioners. But look at those people who've studied the Dharma. At the beginning, maybe they did not feel that their life is valuable, and they did not feel that the life is meaningful. But after studying the methods and the teachings of the Dharma, they completely transformed themselves, and their mentality is not the same anymore. And then Ananda continued to say that the reason I was under the control of the mantra Kapila, it is all because I did not know the location of the realm of reality. I did not know the ultimate truth. So after going through this hardship, Ananda had this great longing to study the reality, to study the ultimate truth. I only hope that the world honored one, out of great kindness and pity, will instruct us in the path of Shamatha guide, in the path of Shamatha, guide the Ichantikas and overthrew the Malichas. Over here, Shamatha shows it's the Shamatha meditation or Shamatha practice, and then the Yichantika or Shamatha means it's a meditation, and then Yichantika means those of people with insufficient faith. And overthrow the Malichas. The Malichas means wrong views. So he requested the Buddha to give the teaching to all the people in the assembly, as well as to the people who doesn't have sufficient faith and whose faith is deficient, and to the people who have complete wrong views or and evil knowledge and views. After he had finished speaking, then Ananda placed his 5 limbs on the ground and started to prostrate, along with the entire great assembly. They then stood on tiptoe and waiting attentively and thirstily and respectfully and really longing to hear the instructions, just as how a thirsty person would then have this great longing to receive water. They were then standing and tiptoed to receive the instructions from the Buddha, and they have this very sincere and really respectful veneration towards the Buddha, and then longing to receive the instruction from the Buddha. They all want to listen to the teaching given by the Buddha. In fact, it is quite important to know that our mind and our physical body at the time of listening to the Dharma is quite important. I noticed, in fact, the collective attitude of everyone listening to the Dharma is very good, even when I'm speaking for a long period of time. Maybe we should stop here today, otherwise it will get rather quite long. Okay, we'll stop here.